Hello, Ryan here, and welcome to Star Citizen Sunday. This is a weekly show which covers all of the news from the week just past. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and let's get on with it. This week, Inside Star Citizen delves into the upcoming 318 daymar settlement. We learn more about the verse from the narrative team on Star Citizen Live, plus CitizenCon details are finally released, and it looks like it is going to be a pretty great event. So this week's Inside Star Citizen was checking out the new Derelict ship settlement that will be found on daymar. Now, it began by mentioning that the intentions of the Montreal team is to add more gameplay to the verse, and for this Derelict settlement they wanted to do something a little different to the Reclaimer site. So for this daymar crash site, which is coming in Alpha 318, the location will have two shipwrecks for players to explore, being the Origin 600i and the Mercury Star Runner. Now this, they say, allows them to have a larger area of the crash site, providing more locations to explore, and they chose daymar, which is a sandy desert moon, to try something different to Microtech's biome with the Reclaimer. For the 600i wreck, it is partially inside of a cave entrance and partially outside, which personally speaking was a great idea, very unique, and likely utilising one of the new sandy cave types as well, so that'll be interesting exploring that. And they have tried to give the impression that the 600i crashed really hard into Daymar's moon. Now, I assume the founders of the wreck did this sort of cabling to stabilise it while exploring. Whether it's mentioned or hinted to, I don't know, but it makes sense. Now, for the MSR, this is a bit further away from the rest of the outpost, where you can see the trail behind it like a traditional crash. For the whole location, though, they wanted to give the impression that it has been lived in and it's being used and has been repurposed, with people there salvaging the ship's remains to resell. There is also a shooting range, which is a nice touch, and they did say that now that they have created this wreck site, they have a lot of settlement assets and can create a lot of different crash sites on other planets and other biomes, but they are open to suggestions on what ship to use next. Now, they were also using the new Houdini tech, which we heard about for a while now, and including in the latest monthly report, in which they can add new geometry assets to existing outposts and create a whole new look and feel, and this helps to speed up the amount of content they create. Now, personally, I love the look of this new wreck settlement. The Reclaimer wreck is cool, but it's not a settlement as such, whereas this location on daymar has habs, it has a population living around it, and I do wonder if they will be either immediately hostile or maybe open to trading, as we did see this scrap sale sign here, so I do wonder if we could go there and trade in scrap or other materials to some degree. It will be great for the new salvaging mechanic, and it would be also great if they could hook it into the new reputation system, so if you shoot at them, they become hostile, but if you trade with them, they become friendly. Either way, it's going to be a great new location to explore and experience, plus it does feel like these types of locations and more are going to start popping up all over the Stanton system and beyond going forwards, as they are continuing to flesh out the tools and the assets more and more. So the speed at which we get these, I feel, is going to really ramp up. It also gives me a bit of an insight into the future of Star Citizen, and even its lonely moons having many points of interest, and as Jared puts it really nicely, these derelict settlements tell a story about some citizens in fiction past, while providing tantalizing clues about the future of salvage, player homesteading, and more. Anyway, next up is kind of a sprint report, taking a look back at how the things like the colonialism outposts have come along since we last checked in. Now, this is an example of the overlay work I was mentioning with Houdini, which is the process of adding new props and dressings that can completely transform the location into something else, like here with the colonialism homestead modules, no longer looking homely and a lot more ominous. This is an outpost that has been taken over by kind of a messy outlaw group who appear to be either slavers or organ harvesters. As you can see, jails and dirty surgical equipment. I kind of do want to get captured just to experience being locked up, but then hopefully get rescued and fight our way out to a ship. But here is an in-game test, they say, of the outlaw overlay in action, which is on a potential homestead for daymar 2, and these tests are to validate what works and what needs adjusting, to help when they decide to release them throughout the verse for dozens and dozens of locations. It also helps to figure out potential feature and UI needs for Rastar, which is the internal tool that the designers have used to populate the entire Pyro system ahead of 4.0, like the sound of that. And these overlays will continue to develop into smaller subsets, with some generalized for use anywhere, while others tailored to specific gangs within the Pyro system. And finally, here is a bit of a sneak peek at early whiteboxing of a planetary repair and service station that we may find dotted around in Stanton, Pyro and beyond. Also, work is underway on producing refineries and other producers that will make use of the upcoming resource management system to provide new opportunities for players to build our credit empire, they say, or hinder the advancement of others. Now, these have me very excited. I do love the idea of firstly being able to land at a repair station planetside and then speak to an NPC or a player even one day to have my wing fixed or replace a component, much like what we see with the Mandalorian on Tatooine. But also these refineries and whatnot will be ownable and likely even buildable by players one day to use in making money. And so much of this is in the works right now and coming around to a releasable state pretty quickly, it seems. But to finish with, Jared did try to show us some outlaw space stations for Pyro, but he wasn't allowed, as they are saving them for CitizenCon and beyond as we approach 4.0. So an amazing episode of Inside Star Citizen there. Some great new points of interest are on the way, which also look like they hold some pretty interesting gameplay too, giving us a bit of an insight into the residents of these locations. We will certainly watch this together on Monday's stream so that we can delve into the potential gameplay elements that we could find ourselves in. But let us move on. So this week's Star Citizen Live was with the narrative team who are responsible for all of the lore and, well, history of the verse, plus the Galactopedia, which is a great resource for learning anything about anything in Star Citizen, and they were all answering our questions. So the first question being, since the Tevarin have been assimilated into the UEE, why don't we see any evidence of their existence in the Stanton system? Now, they did say that eventually the Tevarin will be spread throughout the UEE, and there will be areas with larger enclaves of Tevarin, like in the Branna system, but it will come once the other teams have built out the actual Tevarin aliens. Tevarin are living in the Stanton system, but due to the planets on Stanton being owned by mega corporations, Tevarin architecture, or shrines for example, are not commonplace. But if you travelled to the Elysium system or the Branna system as I mentioned, you will likely see more of their influence there, as there are bigger populations there. So once the Tevarin are developed and in the game, we will start seeing them walking around with regular human populations. And that kind of goes for all the other alien races. Someone did ask about seeing NPC aliens added to spaceports, and the Xi'an, the Banu, Tevarin. Once these are fully developed and placed within the game, they will be then placed within the population. Now the next question is, are the story teams adding more datapads or computer terminals to spread more lore throughout the verse? Now this is something that they have been discussing to try and include more lore with set dressing and such, which should come in greater frequency soon, they say. They also want to expand and improve the interactions with datapads as well. They will be going back through their backlog to implement all of the old dispatches and introduce them into the game at some point so that you can find them in the universe. And I know it was mentioned a little while ago from one of the other narrative team members that they want to find a way to get the lore stories into the actual game so that while you're traveling from place to place, you can just put one on in the background and listen to it or read it as you travel on long distances. So really look forward to that being a thing. And for those of you who haven't read them yet, it might be worth waiting until they're narrated or maybe readable in the verse. Next question is Kid Crimson coming back? And they say he is beloved and not forgotten. And basically he was just one of the characters from one of the lore stories. Next question, how popular is Satterball throughout the verse? Is it likened to football throughout the world? Now Satterball, if you don't know, is kind of an arena sport where it involves EVA and a ball and tractor beams, and you've got to maneuver around this arena in a squad trying to score with this ball while firing it using tractor beams and so on. So a bit like Ender's Game, but they do say that Satterball is very popular, and a while ago they did create a list of various teams and divisions and spread them throughout the verse, so it is an empire-wide sport. And there will be big stadiums found throughout the verse as well, and they have mentioned how the Banu really love watching the sport. They don't necessarily support a team, they just enjoy the hype and excitement that humans share. So it is definitely a beloved sport, and with the Montreal branding team, they will likely work out with narrative to introduce sporting Satterball posters and other signage around the systems as more systems get fleshed out. Question is though, who will you be supporting? Next question is, was Darnell framed? And they say no comment, you have to investigate for yourself. and come to your own conclusion. And if you want to take part in that mission, which is probably one of the oldest missions we've had in the game, head yourself over to Crusader and take on the PI investigation mission, which should be in your personal tab, and it will take you to the Gundo Kovlek station, which is a derelict shipping hub where you have to find and click on datapads and whatnot to find information as to what happened to Danel. Really interesting story, actually. Next question, does the Pyro crab have a name? And yes, it is called the whip crab, so W-H-I-P, which is due to its long tentacles that flail out. So basically when the first person discovered it, they were like, look at those whips. Likely we will hear more about this crab as Pyro gets further fleshed out. So hopefully this year we'll hear more about it, especially now as creatures are beginning to get their work. Talking of which, what is a Ranter? Now, this is a little isopod that kind of scuttles around inside caves, sucking up all the different minerals, and can apparently survive in very many different atmospheres. The dung that we are able to harvest right now is kind of from these creatures, and they are inspired by Wombat's dung. We actually got to see one in the monthly report, as the Interactables team have started working on them because they will be harvestable in some manner. Next question, do any races still practice religion? So, yes, absolutely, they have put a lot of thought into developing the various religions for the different races. The Xi'an have a very complex code of ethics or spiritual belief called Latova that is dedicated to the understanding of time, which ties to the understanding of actions across time due to their lifespan being so long. So any decisions made, they understand, can have a ripple effect that cannot be foreseen throughout the years, and the exploration of time as a concept is something that they like to look into. Plus, the ability to meditate to experience time at a different rate is a capability of theirs. And apparently there is a Xi'an endurance race that ties into this, so the Xi'an travel great distances, and the best racers can enter this meditative state and travel longer without needing to stop. So it's all very deep. I know there is the Journeymans, which is a human religion of sorts, who believe in the journey rather than the destination, which I'm sure a lot of people will roleplay in the verse. But again, check out the Galactopedia, type this into Star Citizen's search bar in their website, or even just type it into Google, and you can find a lot of information about this kind of stuff. Now, the next question is, in a recent lore post, there was an implication that violent resistance towards Hurston's government is generally frowned upon. Is this an opinion from a particular narrator, or are open acts of rebellion against Hurston more or less unheard of? Is there not a group of residents launching raids on Klesha prisons to free political prisoners? Now, basically, when they write these lore posts, narrative tried to write them from the voice of who they are representing, so it was their opinion, not the actual opinion of the narrative team, which with some characters, it does allow them to explore more sort of fringe news stories that are very conspiracy-based, which is not saying it's 100% true or 100% false. That is all to be found out within the game. Now, Hurston is known as a company to kind of quash any form of rebellion, and going up against them should not be easy, and there will be very varied views from all the characters of the population. Next question is, does the Galactopedia have a point of view? And they say the Galactopedia is aimed to be as neutral as possible, so without any bias, and to be just more factual, rather than including like marketing from ships. This is because it is a lore written by the people of the Ark, which is a huge archive that was made by humans in partnership with all of the other alien races after the fall of the messes, to kind of show a bit of trust and openness, and all aliens can put in their information if they wish to. Next question, will we be able to access the Galactopedia from inside the game? And they say yes, that is the plan, and they are working on it, so maybe it could be some form of Mobiglass app. Next question, can we get more pictures and videos within the Galactopedia entries? And again, this is wanted, but right now it's more just focused on making the best game possible. So once Turbulent have more time freed up, they will be able to help get pictures and videos into the Galactopedia. They also do want to get Star Citizen's timeline implemented into the Galactopedia as well, and that's probably a good place to start if you want to learn more about the lore of Star Citizen, is just type Star Citizen timeline, and it'll show you what happened from, I suppose, 2075 with Robert Space Industries all the way up to now. So eventually I'm sure it will get to where we want it to be, and one day even visit the Ark, which is a physical location in the TIAC system. But again, Turbulent are heavily involved in working on persistent entity streaming, server meshing, and other important aspects of Star Citizen, so that takes precedence. Next question is, will player discoveries ever add to or change the Galactopedia? And they say yes, definitely. Already the Daymar rally has been added amongst other aspects, and it has always been part of the plan from the very beginning of the project that players can make a name for themselves within the verse and forever be recorded based on their actions, be that taking out a well-known infamous pirate, discovering a new system, or even just being really good at something. As it is a skill-based game, if there is a particular player that is the go-to player for overclocking components, then they may even get their name in the Galactopedia as the prominent overclocker. There we go, there's the title. Anyway, will we see more Xi'an houses becoming ship manufacturers like Gatak and Apoa? And they say, as needed, they will make more, but the Xi'an Empire have imperial granted monopolies on top of certain things, like Apoa having the monopoly to make Xi'an military fighters, and Gatak having a monopoly on haulers. So it really depends on what they need. There is a lot of room for fiction to expand, but they don't want to go too overboard with it, as it is very restrictive with the Xi'an government. Next question, is there anything Pyro that you can talk about? And they say they do love these new nutrient cube food types that we got to see on a monthly report. Very good for you, but also very cheap. And there will be more on Pyro's foodstuffs planned for an Inside Star Citizen in February, in fact. Next question, looking at Pyro and plans for piracy, are there plans to have both Ninetales and Xenothreat present there, or just the one? Xenothreat are based out of Pyro, so you will certainly see them there, and they are also the group that are currently ruling the Ruin Station, but Ninetales are now more Stanton-based, with Grimhex being their main HQ. There will likely be a crossover, but they really want a unique feeling to Pyro, and so unlike Stanton, you will actually be running into many various outlaw groups while there, versus what we have here. And as the game progresses, we will see this crossover, but Xenothreat are not the only gang in Pyro. Like we know, there are the Fire Rats, but also Ruin Station often has feuding gangs to try and take over, so expect to see a lot of gangs, both big scale, small scale, all the way down to just petty outlaws. Next question, will we ever see space rats or space vermin? And they say absolutely, they have them planned already, and one of the suggestions that they had was plans for a space barnacle that can stick onto your hull and kind of wear it away over time, requiring you to EVA out and use your multi-tool to remove them, which I think is a great idea. And I can just imagine landing and seeing a load of them on my ship and then having to remove them all or pay someone at a settlement to do it for me. Next question is, are there other surface settlements in the Nyx system, either on Daymar or on the other planets? And they say, yes, there will be. Nyx has settlements outside of Daymar and Levski. There is another group called the Marain that will have homesteads and outposts in different parts of the system to visit and get missions from. And they did say that right now, we really only have a light coating of narrative in terms of what is available, and the groups, gangs, creatures, and generally everything in the verse. There is way more to come and get fleshed out than we even have right now, and each system, as it comes around, they will begin further fleshing out each place even more. Next question, what is holding back unveiling other species in the game? Now, firstly, they would like to add the ones that we have already, like the Xi'an, Banu, Vanduul, Tavaran. But in regards to another question asking if all alien races are humanoid or bipedal, they say that they will focus on the ones they have now, but a lot of the expansion of aliens is less about alien races and more about unique fauna to be found throughout the verse. So it's safe to say that outside of what we know now, we do have the Cathach, which are yet to be seen, but one day, you never know, there may be another alien race capable of interacting with us, similar to how the Banu or the Xi'an do, or maybe a warring race like the Vanduul. But they do have massive plans for creatures and aliens of all types that are less about joining the more advanced and intelligent races, and more about creating the unknown diversity and danger or intrigue found around the many star systems and planets yet to be developed. Next question is, since we can replicate humans with the new regeneration tech, does this mean meats can be synthesized in the same way? And yes, they can. This is actually already happening in the world. They can grow meat from cells, but Whammers, the burger chain, I remember it saying that it uses this tech for their own burgers, which is way before the regeneration technology was discovered. And this is actually what a lot of the inner systems use to get their main source of protein, rather than actually raising livestock, which would be more of a luxury. However, if you venture out to the frontier systems, you may see actual livestock being raised for food, like we heard about the Kazi grazer cow being a prime example, pun intended. Next question is, what planetary system are you most excited to dive into? And they say Goss, which has a beautiful sky, 2 suns, waterfalls. Also, Nexus was mentioned, as it has 4 jump points connected to Outlaw systems, and the UEE have, over the years, been trying to retake the Nexus system from the Outlaws. And it has been somewhat successful, with one planet being taken by the UEE, and another one which has fortified cities for people to live in safely. But the minute that you leave those cities and head into the countryside, he says it's a free-for-all. In fact, the lore story Sid and Cyrus did take place in the Nexus system, which is a great read. I believe they were trying to find their daughter, I think. And this gives a lot of insight into what to expect in Nexus. Next question. If jump points connect various systems in a large web, how is it possible for anyone to invade anyone? What is stopping the UEE from creating an impenetrable choke point at the jump point exit? Now, they say that the idea for jump points is that there are often very stable main jump points that connect systems together, which are the jumps that get the infrastructure. But jump points are more like Swiss cheese and kind of soft all over the area. So there are other more unstable connections that can be found of different sizes and various qualities. So a player or NPC can find a new path between the systems that are more like back roads, and they can sneak in and out, which does sound very cool, and it will be very interesting to see just how the Pyro Stanton jump point works. But they have mentioned that jump points can often feel like a living entity where they will change from time to time, and a large jump point might reduce in size, or it may disappear entirely for a duration. So there is a lot of variation here, but each jump point will have some stability over others. But we'll see that as it fleshes out more. Final question is, what lore is subject to be retconned? Now, with Star Citizen being in active development, lore has to be somewhat flexible, but they do think long and hard if they have to change anything, and they don't do it lightly. They try to stick to the original ideas as much as possible. For Pyro, which was originally a lot less habitable, it was written way before they decided to create each planet and moon physically. And so they made the decision to have Pyro as more of a habitable system, as they now want more places for players to visit. And personally speaking, as much as I love reading the lore, especially in the early days, I am more than happy for planets to become more developed in some areas. Not to say that all systems with desolate planets should become habitable now, but I think it will be far more interesting from a gameplay standpoint to have more habitable than inhabitable. That said, the lore, as he mentioned, was written way before development even started, so understandably there will be some changes here and there. So that was Star Citizen Live this week. Quite a big one, in fact. I didn't think it was going to be that long. Some great new information regarding certain aspects of Star Citizen lore that will one day make its way into the verse. Next week's Star Citizen Live, we'll be talking with the people working on Persistent Entity Streaming, answering our questions, what it is, what it isn't, and just setting those expectations. So, it should be an interesting one. So also this week, a Star Watch lore post was released which talks about why a movie star was fired over their thoughts on regeneration. Both the Persistent Universe and Squadron 42 monthly reports were released, of which I have already covered the Persistent Universe report, with the Squadron 42 report coming sometime next week. I will link the PU report in the description below. It was a monster of a report with so much information, so do get your snacks at the ready before you watch it. The free fly for the Ship Showdown has commenced and will conclude on September 15th at 8 PM UTC time, so be sure to get yourselves involved. If you are on the fence about buying Star Citizen, now is your best chance to check it out without spending a single penny, although it can lead to financial debt. Plus, CitizenCon 2952 details have finally released. Now, I will cover this in much more detail and talk about what to expect and what we will likely see in a separate video, but it kicks off on October 8th at 3 PM UTC time and features 7 different panels, each discussing something different, with Pyro, new investigation missions, new underground facilities, various ship speed master modes, the upcoming changes to Lorville, new and old ships, plus the resource network system that will enable ship engineering. It is set to be a very exciting event that I am so looking forwards to. And as I say, I will do a dedicated video talking about CitizenCon 2952 and what to expect in the coming week. So that brings us to the end of the show. If you do enjoy my content, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. Also, I am able to do this thanks to my very generous patrons and channel members. If you appreciate what I do and would like to help make it even better from as little as $1 a month, all of the links are provided below.